on his stream are cock and vaginas.
Cannot believe that. How dare you?
How dare he? How very dare he?
How very dare he? That's exactly it. So how's it going, Logic?
Ah, very good. Yes, very good.
Very good, very good.
Are you streaming? Let me grab your.
Yeah, I went ahead and...
Let me. 1 second. Before we start tucking into, there's more to talk about than usual, isn't it?
Yeah. Crazy news. Crazy. Especially of all the cast members, she's got to be like one of the youngest that was on the show consistently. You know?
Yes.
And for those who don't
Right,
know,
well,
we're talking about Michelle Trachtenberg died today.
Sadly, so. Well, let's quickly do introductions because if we have anyone who clicks on our VODs and doesn't know who we are, let's have do a quick little intro. And what got us into Buffy, like a little 10-second snippet, hey?
Absolutely. That's actually a really great idea. Why have we not thought of this before?
Why don't you take the lead?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll go first just because that way people won't think you're not a gentleman or whatever. I'm Hannah, also Beware the Moon. I do a horror movie podcast on Rumble, on YouTube. You can sometimes find it on Spotify. My older ones are on Spotify, but not my newer ones. It's just a pain in the ass to put them over there, but yeah. And I also do video game streaming on Rumble.
I am Mr. WhenLogicDies. I am a professional twat. Part-time Rumble drummer. I don't really do any. I attempted to do a music podcast at one point, and I kind of fell on its ass because I was too lazy to carry it on. But prior to Christmas, Hannah and I were messaging. I might have even been like to say Merry Christmas. I can't remember why.
Yeah, we weren't.
And the subject of Buffy somehow came up, and we were both like, "Oh my god, you're a Buffy head." And then we were like, sort of testing each other's Buffy knowledge. Oh, what about this? What about this? And it transpires that Hannah is the master of Buffy amongst us.
I don't know about that.
But I'll be a glad second fiddle. And so, as was alluded to earlier, very sadly, we found out. Well, I mean, I messaged Hannah not 15 minutes ago to say,
yeah,
Michelle Trachtenberg has passed away, which is sad news. And I actually said maybe we should cancel, but I think it's. I was thinking about this just before getting on. I think it's because I've said quite nasty things about. No, not nasty. I'm not a big fan of Dawn, and I made that very, very clear. So I think there's this part of me which was like, "Oh, I've been a bit mean. Maybe I shouldn't do a podcast."
The post-mortem regret.
Yeah, so I feel it's like it's post-coitus, isn't it?
Thank you, Araconda.
Yeah, the long walk home, of shame. So yeah, I mean it is sad. So
yeah,
from what I've read, it was something related to do a kidney transplant, was it? Liver transplant?
I don't know.
And it didn't go very well.
The one you sent me said natural causes, and I was like, she died at 39. You want me to believe she just passed away from old age? That's some bullshit.
Well, if it is from what I'm reading, it's that the liver transplant and oh wow, I've gone American there. I apologize. Transplant, the American transplant, the liver transplant. We're doing the proper language in the Queen's language. It just didn't take very well. So bless her. That's rough. 39. That's I'm 42. So that's rough, hey? That's really rough.
And if it's a transplant, for sure, there's a lot of complications that go with that. Like now
Exactly
would
right.
be a horrible time to have a transplant just because of all the COVID stuff. I mean, when you transplant, you have to suppress your own immune system, so it's really, really easy for things to go wrong. Like,
Yes.
my
yeah.
grandpa had a lung transplant, and he would sometimes get pneumonia and go to the hospital, and they would offer him vaccines, And we were like, you can't do that. That will fucking kill him. Like, his system does not fight it off. It's like bacteria and all that stuff. It doesn't fight off viruses on purpose.
You're right.
So you can't just offer someone a vaccine. So depending on just a multitude of factors, pretty much anything can go wrong at any time once you've gotten the transplant. And that's it for you.
Yeah. Well, touch wood, I haven't had to go through that myself. So I've got very little input there. I've had bits cut out of me. That much I can say. But yeah, so it's very sad news. I mean, she hasn't shown up just yet. Was it season 3?
Yeah.
Where she gets sort of squeezed in. Thankfully for us, in a way, we're deep into season 1, so we're not really going to be talking too much about Dawn.
Yeah. Well, especially, she's not a particular favorite of mine. Unfortunately, like, I remember, like, the first time watching, like, and Dawn shows up and everybody's like, yeah, Dawn, Buffy's sister. I was like, am I on drugs? Did I just take a copious amount of meth or something? Like, everybody's acting like this is normal. I don't know this bitch.
I do remember that myself, where I mean, the beginning. I'm sure it's the beginning of the season, and it's kind of cleverly done in a way.
Yeah, it is.
Where, you're just expected to know who she is, and of course it transpires later that everyone's memory was adjusted to fit her in. So.
Which I think is so much fun, because you don't have to stick to the rules you set in the first season necessarily. Like, you can kind of fuck around with stuff like that if you're in this universe, this Buffyverse. Like, it's very different.
Yes.
And you can do a lot of different things with it. So I'm glad they do.
And as we've discussed in the past, the rules kind of do change anyway. You know, like the great example was some vampires you stake and they instant turn to dust, and then I think it was episode 2 or whatever, the big guy that was in the X-Files, he gets stabbed and he stumbles around for a minute waxing lyrical about how he's got a stake through his heart and then turns to dust. So, you know, but you got to sort of suspend disbelief in general, because, you know, sometimes the story needs to just progress, and you've kind of got to go, well, this has happened. Don't worry. Don't think about it too much, because if you think about it too much, then you're going to get bogged down in the weeds, and it becomes less fun in a way.
Oh yeah, that's kind of how I felt watching Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. That fight scene in the crematory area, where Buffy's kind of getting her ass handed to her, and she needs Owen to step in for a second, and I'm like, I don't believe that, but it's okay.
Yeah,
we'll just keep rolling with the punches, I guess.
Well, yeah. So I mean, power levels in Buffy has been. I think I said this day 1.
Yeah.
Maybe even 10 minutes in, I was like, power levels in Buffy has always bothered me. Like, so we're going to sort of give it a bit more of a scope. We're going to be discussing 3 episodes was the intention: Teacher's Pet, Never Kill a Boy on a First Date, The Pack. But actually, I watched up to I, Robot 2, Jane. So I'm happy for us to discuss further if we feel the need to. Although I feel like Angel probably needs its own, as in the episode Angel needs its own entire episode, because that was, for me, what did I watch? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out of that lot, Angel was by far the best. Then the second best was The Pack. And actually, I didn't mind Never Kill on the Boy on the First Date nearly as much as. So I remember not enjoying it very much.
Yeah, same. Like, it's just kind of a nothing episode, even though
I
it's not.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, like I love the bits with Cordelia where she's trying to like shoe in on her date, and he is so polite but so firm, and I love that about him. Like, the way he did it is so nice, even though Cordelia's, I mean, she's being a bitch.
Cordelia.
Yeah, so, like, the way he's just like, hey, I'm with Buffy tonight, you know, like, no, I'm with Buffy, and she's like, well, weekend, and he's like, I'm with Buffy. Like, I don't know how else to say this to you. Like, and then Buffy's kind of like, she comes in and gets sassy, and so I think it's so funny that, like, he's such a gentleman about it and so polite.
I think the one criticism would be that his character just kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because he's meant to be this quiet, reserved guy, and then at the end he's sort of desperate to go. Well, not at the end. He's desperate to go to the crematorium to find out what's going on, and then at the end he Buffy has to give him the kick because he's like sort of like this thrill-seeking junkie sort of thing, and that didn't make a huge amount of sense to me. Like, if you're like a quiet, reserved guy, I imagine you. I guess that's the point, maybe, that Buffy messed him up. Maybe.
Well, I
Maybe
think too they try to explain it away with, well, he's got this morbid fascination with death poetry, and so that's supposed to like translate over to him wanting to live this crazy life secretly. And I'm like, I don't really think you understand the type of people you're trying to talk about, which, I mean, it's the late 90s, so it's not like you have a lot of, like, I think in today's culture, you kind of have an excessive amount of access to any type of quote-unquote, like, personality that you would want. You can find someone on Twitter or Tumblr or Facebook or, Rumble or something like that, or YouTube, where they just talk about the one thing that they really like, so you can kind of derive character clues from that. Whereas in 1997, you have to meet that person in real life. So I think maybe he hasn't met someone who really actually likes Emily Dickinson and doesn't really know why they would like Emily Dickinson. And he's never really met someone who has a morbid fascination for death. So he's not really, he doesn't really know. Yeah. And so he's kind of riding out of his ass with Owen's character, I think. Which, I mean, like I said, it's not entirely his fault. It's the 90s. Things are very different back then. So I think that's part of it, is just he himself has never probably had an interaction with someone like Owen, and so, or whoever was doing the writing for Owen's character.
Yeah, he just didn't feel like a fully fleshed out, realized human person. I don't know, he wasn't all that solid, but the whole premise was quite pleasant, where, she's clearly in love with Angel, even at this point, and she wants to have that normalcy in her life, so she's trying to reach out to a normal boy, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Well, somewhat normal. So yeah, no, I quite enjoyed that. So Teacher's Pet, what was your thoughts before I rip it apart again?
I was thinking about it, and for me, I'm such a, like, it might be a 4 for me, just because I think we're 4 episodes into this new series that's about, like, fucking kick-ass women and women being kick-ass and female power, and then the 4th episode in, we already have a male gaze-centered, like, story beat. And I'm like, it's so, like, we don't have enough time to connect with Xander, so, like, to me, it's just horny teenage boy bullshit episode. And that's kind of frustrating to me, I think, is one of the reasons I don't like it.
They kind of explain it away by saying that it's the pheromones and that they have no control over it. So so the new teacher, so there's a nice teacher that Buffy's taken to, a biology teacher, and he passes away. We don't know why. A substitute teacher comes in. The TLDR is she's a giant praying mantis, which it's quite goofy, and as was said in the previous stream, it's a very sort of Goosebumps kind of, like, that almost childish horror.
Yeah.
And so the boys are instantly attracted to her. She's obviously played, I don't know what the actress's name is, but she's a complete fox, and that's obviously meant to be part of the allure, and the men falling head over heels for her.
I think it's funny.
What she's doing is,
because, like, afterwards I realized, because they talk about praying mantises, and I already knew this for some reason. I don't know why I knew this the first time even I saw this episode. I fucking knew this about praying mantises, but when they mate, they rip off the head of their mate, the females do.
Correct. Yes.
And so thinking about that, and they find their teacher. She finds Mr. Greg without his head, and the overarching thing is that this praying mantis only preys on virgins, and I'm like, so Mr. Greg, as old as he
So
is a virgin, clearly.
is a virgin in theory. Yeah. I think for me that was the highlight of the episode. So there's a bully. I can't think of his name now, but he's like the typical high school jock. We'll call him jock. Um, and he's picking on Xander, and there's like a line in, I'm pretty sure it's in the Bronze, where he's talking about um, hooking up with girls, and Xander then, not to be emasculated, grabs Willow and Buffy and tries to sort of play it off. And then sort of the punchline at the end where Willow sort of goes, "Oh well, it's just such a shame that she targets virgins,"
Yeah.
and both of them don't want to acknowledge that they are, which I thought was probably the highlight of the episode.
Yeah.
There's not. It's a filler episode. I think your 4 is fair. Um, maybe if we're being generous, maybe a 5.
Yeah.
Like it's not awful. There are worse episodes.
Oh yeah. For sure. It's
But
one of
it's
those that I'm almost neutral about. I think just
yeah.
I'm 30 now, so like obviously I understand men do this and men are like bragging about body counts and things like that. But to me it's just such a frustrating thing that men even do that, because like you're only doing it to impress other men, and supposedly you're not after men, so why are you even fucking doing it? Like, it doesn't make any sense to
Yeah.
me. It's like when men on the internet are like, I did this thing for my girl, and they're like, you're gay, I can't believe you would do that for her, that's so embarrassing. And I'm like, well, clearly she was impressed, and that was kind of the point. Like, if he wanted to impress you, he would have sucked you off or whatever. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me that men do this thing where they kind of compare each other via body count. And I'm like, there's so much, like, and it's a cultural thing, like, and it's a
Yeah,
men
well,
thing.
men are sort of naturally braggadocious, and we're
Yeah.
sort of a bit goofy and all that. So I think it does play off that.
Yeah. Like,
One
it
thing is, I'm not.
100% is like a realistic thing. It's just, to me, it's
Yes.
frustrating that episode 4 of this girl-centric, and I guess that's kind of, I mean, you can't just have a girl-centric, unless there are literally no men in this universe. You can't just have a full girl-centric series, because obviously Buffy does like men, so we're gonna have to look at the male gaze
Yes.
at some point. But I think just
And
episode 4 is
and
too soon for that for me.
and like I've said a few times now, the show, I feel like Xander is your eyes, your everyman. Is that we're seeing that the world through his eyes, which arguably we kind of don't in this episode, because he's the bait.
Yeah, he's kind of
Um,
snowed over by those pheromones, you know. He's a little bit
yes.
blinded, love blind, pheromone blind.
Um, do you think this is an episode that would work if there were anything? Let's say, I mean, we know that the reboot's likely to happen. Do you think they're going to do an episode like this, or do you think it's kind of its time? Because I would argue this is arguably sort of borderline, sort of this new generation of TV, which is probably why I don't enjoy it very much.
I
It's it's
think,
it's, it's almost got those I hate to say woke, but it's almost got those like hallmark woke moments. It's not woke because it's way too early for that.
oh
But
yeah. Well, and I think too, like it's not necessarily, like, maybe that's the thing that also frustrates me, is it's not necessarily like condemning Xander, and I think his name's Blaine, for their braggadocious body count swapping
I think it is
story
Blaine.
thing. It doesn't condemn them for that. It doesn't approve of it either, but it does, it's very, it's neutral. And you think about who Joss Whedon is, and you're like, he's that guy who was trying to brag
Yeah.
about body count. So I think maybe that's why. I think one of the benefits of this new Buffy series, it could be a benefit, it could be a detriment. I don't really know. I mean, like, it's hard to tell. But they've got female writers, and the original actress who plays Buffy, Sarah Michelle Gellar, are supposedly involved in writing these episodes, and so I think that could be extremely beneficial, because then you won't get those, like, those weird moments where you're like, for a female empowerment show, that's fucking weird to do, you know, kind of a thing. And I think that this episode has a few moments where I'm like, for a female empowerment show, and it's not necessarily a female empowerment show, you know, strictly, but you kind of want it to be a little bit more like it would make more sense to me if there was a clear stance on, in the end, about, like, yeah, men shouldn't be bragging about these sorts of things and blah 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 blah, or because I really don't think it helps anyone. Clearly it doesn't help the men. I mean, you look at how insecure both Blaine and Xander are about their sexuality, which is crazy to me, because I'm like, you know, you're straight, so then, like, why are you so, like, why do you feel the need to prove it so hard? Like, I don't know, just one of those weird cultural things that I'm like, I don't get it. Probably because I'm so secure in my viewpoints and so secure in who I know myself to be. And that's not me, like, bragging. That's just facts. Like,
yeah, it's just how it is. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It for me, it doesn't hit. I don't think it's like an acting thing.
Yeah.
Even like some of the set design, and that's quite good.
Yeah.
Especially where Xander goes ham with the machete on the eggs. I thought that little, like, egg thing that he's cutting up is pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's not much like I mean, I'd argue it's a bit like modern movies and that, where all the ingredients are there, but just because the ingredients there doesn't make a cake, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just not been cooked long enough, whatever it might be. It just felt a little flat, but it wasn't as bad as I remembered. I remembered hating it.
Yeah, and I don't, like I said, like, it's not an episode that I'm like, let me go watch that one, you know, but it's also not one that I'm like, I don't ever want to watch that episode again, you know. It's not that bad. It's I mean, it's a story to tell. It doesn't really have any, like, I think maybe that's what frustrates me about it, is there's no character, like, development in this episode, nor is there any storyline development, and so I'm like, it's wholly
little
filler.
bit lazy.
Yeah.
And it's not a particularly strong monster of the week, so it be just, and because it's so early on, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe if this was like a season 2 midway, and maybe it would feel a little less misplaced, or maybe even later in season 1, maybe it would be a bit stronger later on. Maybe it's just sort of misplaced.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of Buffy episodes, even the filler ones, they tend to do something with either the characters' relationships or the characters themselves, you know? Like, they either figure something out about how they feel about someone else, or how they relate to someone else, or they figure something out about how they relate to themselves, or something they want to do or to stop doing, you know, kind of a thing. Like, it's the character development shit. And this episode has really, like, none of that. So it's so weak in a otherwise pretty strong season, because there's a lot of episodes that, like, the pack, you know, Xander kind of does this thing where he learns a little bit of something, and my favorite is that he's like, we never speak of this ever again, to Giles, and Giles agrees, and then in the next season he outs himself, and they're like, we thought you didn't remember anything about that, and he's like,
Well, let's quickly do never kill a boy on the first day. I think we've covered teacher's pet enough.
Yeah.
A 4, maybe a 5 at a push, if you're feeling very generous. It's not as bad as I remembered. I particularly enjoyed the end. It's fine.
Yeah.
Never kill a boy in the first.
I think too, like, just the monster idea itself isn't bad. Like we said, it's just weak in other points, but
It's a weak monster idea, like a giant praying mantis that's only vampires can detect. That's the only other sort of beat from the story, is that she scares away a big bad vampire that's hunting, and Buffy drags that vampire out to try and work out where she lives, which is...
I do love that little bit of the story that Buffy's like, I'm gonna kick your ass and then you're gonna lead the way. And he's like, you can tell he's like, this is shit, man. Like, I didn't come back from the dead for this.
Yeah. So never kill boy on a first date is like we sort of spoke about earlier. Is Buffy trying to kindle a romance with a bookworm who has taken a strong interest in Buffy as well. Cordelia has taken interest in him as well, so there's a bit of a dynamic between Buffy, Cordelia, and
Owen.
I can't even. Owen, thank you.
Yeah, and Owen, I think too. Owen is like, as much as he's the strong silent type, he very much is puppy dog.
Well,
And
very much for Buffy,
yeah,
big time.
and I
Yeah.
think Cordelia likes him just because he's kind. I mean, he is cute. Don't get me wrong, and he's tall.
He's a handsome chap. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got those two things going for him, but he's also very like, he seems like someone not easily attained, and I think that's why Cordelia likes him. You know, that's the only reason Cordelia is really going for him, is because yes, he's handsome and he's not easily obtained, and so I will go and snatch him.
Yes.
Which is such a Cordelia thing.
There's a bit more in the Bronze, which I honestly like. Any episode where they spend time in the Bronze, I adore, especially when the music in the background is good.
Oh yeah.
There's a bit more a little bit more master development because, well, I didn't realize how, well, not a little but quite a lot, because I didn't realize how sort of integral this was to the overarching story, because the big part is that from the death of five, someone will rise. I can't remember the exact.
From the ashes of five, yeah.
From the ashes of five, thank you. And there's this big bad Texan vampire that you think is the one that's risen and is going to be
the anointed
master's, anointed one. And there's a nice little twist at the end, which I always enjoyed that. Again, that's a very typical Whedonism, where, it's played straight. This is the big bad Texan. He's a badass.
Yeah,
he's gonna. This is the guy you've got to worry about. Oh no, it's not.
It's a literal child.
It's a literal child, and he and the Texan gets burnt up, nice and crispy in a crematorium.
I think probably one of the reasons why, like, I will say it's definitely supposed to be so very pivotal for the story and so very pivotal for this season's overarching villains, but I just think the Anointed One is so overhyped and underwhelming in the end. Like, sure, he does technically lead spoiler alert, there's this prophecy about the Anointed One leading Buffy to her death, and he does technically do that. But then after that, he's so not, like, Spike literally manhandles him into the sunlight, and that's it for him. So the Anointed One does this one thing, this one really big bad, and that's kind of it. Like,
if you think he's played by a child, the only way you're going to make something like that work is how they do it. It's like she's led by the child, because physically she would dominate. There's no and exactly like you said, Spike literally just picks him up by the scruff and throws him out into the sun. There's you can't have and it's done well, because otherwise you'd be like, well, what are the power levels again? If this kid's all of a sudden doing backflips and whatever, it doesn't make sense. You got to have it played. So there has to be rules.
Well, and can you imagine in 1997 having your almighty vampire slayer just like kick some kid's ass on set? How the fuck are you gonna do that?
See, I think you might have got away with it in the 90s.
You probably could have.
The music was edgier, TV was edgier, like, people were less worried about being offended and all that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think, too, like, I don't, like, they're like, the Anointed One this and the Anointed One that, and then for him to end the way he does, and he really isn't, like, he does the one thing at the Master's bidding, and that's kind of, like, it. So I think for as much as they hyped up the Anointed One, it just kind of frustrates me that he ends up being such a non-villain in the end, because he doesn't have any good ideas of his own. He doesn't have any, like...
I think that's a typical Whedonism again. Like, you play something up, like you're expecting this bit again, but like with the whole Texan, like the reveal is it isn't the big badass Texan. It's some tiny little scrawny boy, 14 years old or whatever. Again, he's built up to be so strong and powerful, and what is he? All he actually really does is guide her down into the hole.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's that sort of almost typical Whedonism, so playing with your
Expectations.
your thinking, expectations, But I mean, I was surprised at how much it helped, or not helped, that it progressed the storyline for the Master. The Owen thing, it's kind of neat because it's sort of showing Buffy and her sort of. She's a teenage girl in the end. That's that's one. I know they're played by 20-something-year-olds, but it can be easily lost. That they are teenagers and that she just wants to be a teenage girl, quite honestly.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is definitely, it's such an important part of Buffy's character that she's like, I haven't gotten to live my life yet, and I'm supposed to save the world for everybody. Like, I haven't even saved the world. I haven't even done things for myself yet. Like,
yes,
and so this is one of those, like, Giles, I love when Giles comes and Owen is there to pick her up from the date, and he's like, you're going on a date again? And she's like, no, there was no first date, Giles, get it right. You ruined my first date.
And Owen's kind of nice to have in the sense that, because obviously the whole Scooby Gang are all in on it.
Thank you, Batman.
So it's not, so you need that person who's not in on it and allows for those little quips and those in jokes, because we get the in jokes where Owen doesn't. He's clueless to why they're whispering and what the heck they're talking about.
And I think probably my favorite moment in this episode is when he's like, yeah, we tried the office, but it's locked, and she coughs and uses her Slayer strength.
No, it's not.
She's like, no, it's not. And you're like, oh shit. It's just that part to me is so funny, and I don't know why. It's just the way she plays it, like her expression, just, it's really good acting in that moment, and it's so damn funny. And there's so much of that, like little tiny quips in Buffy that are just so fucking good that, like, you really, like, it's just good stuff. And even like when she's like, we're gonna find a nice safe room to play and look around in, okay?
Which transpires isn't after all that, because that's where the Texan is hiding, and he's come to life quoting scripture, and he's a genuinely terrifying force. But again, this it's sort of that typical Whedon writing, like you said with the quip with the door. Weaker shows wouldn't get that sort of subtlety right.
Yeah.
And it's those little clever lines where, and one, acted well, and two, written well.
Yeah.
It just flows sort of. So sometimes it's really quick that you almost miss it.
Yep.
And I kind of appreciate that. And I know it's not related to this at all, but a big favorite of my shows is Archer, which I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
But that's written super quick and super quippy, and I find sometimes I will completely miss something and I'll have to rewind. And you actually kind of have that with Buffy as well. So it's arguably like, this is a bit of a stretch, sure, but it's the seedlings of the Archer idea with like those really quippy, quick one-liners that you blink and you miss it.
Yeah.
But overall, what would you say for Never Killed Boy in the First Date?
I'd say I definitely favor it more than I do Teacher's Pet. I'd probably give it like a 6 or a 7, depending on my mood. Because I do like
I enjoyed
Owen.
It quite a bit more. And I would probably go for a 7,
Yeah, and I love Jealous Angel. I think that's fucking hilarious.
Yes.
Like when Owen walks back up, and first of all, I just think it's hilarious that the Bronze, which is like the teenage hotspot that's like grungy and dirty, they sell muffins, like that always kills me. I just think that's hilarious. And he's standing there with the muffin, and Angel just like leans up against the railing like, motherfucker, who the fuck is this, kind of an attitude. And that just gets me. It's so funny to me to see this like 200-year-old just like, who the fuck this is? And like getting jealous over some teenage boy.
Yeah, especially when you consider his age and who he's been with and all that. Which I know we're jumping a little bit ahead here, but I kind of wanted to bring up the fact that in Angel, I'd mentioned earlier how it didn't make sense that Darla was there and he didn't know who she was and so on. And there's a lot of things going on. We won't go too much into Angel, but a lot of those things that I've been complaining about are tied up in Angel.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how quickly it's kind of addressed there. It's like you learn that she is Angel's sire. You learn that the Master is her sire. You like all those things that obviously you and I know because we've watched the show so many times. And I couldn't even think why I knew it. I didn't realize it was an Angel.
Right.
I would have assumed it was Angel the show, like season one of Angel the show. Um, but like a lot of those things get tied up, and you sort of Angel's character really gets sort of strengthened there, um, which was great,
Yeah.
but not really relevant. But I just thought it was, yeah.
Well, and I think too, like you, I forget that when Angel is like, he gets tagged by whoever, and I can't fucking remember who it was, but someone is like, "Hey, you're a vampire with a soul. You should be helping the Slayer if you really want, like, redemption and shit like
Which,
that." And so,
which she doesn't know yet because I hadn't clicked that she didn't. So again, in earlier episodes, I said, well, why does she not understand the power levels and so forth? Like, um, especially like I think it's episode one where she's doing the backflips around him.
yeah,
Um, but in Angel, it's revealed that she basically does well. She doesn't know that he's a vampire at all because when they go for a kiss, the cross hits him and he reveals his vampire face. And so I kind of hadn't. I don't know why I hadn't processed that she just didn't know that.
yeah. Well, and I think too, like, it's something that, like, I forget is Angel had watched Buffy when she lived in LA. So
True.
that's kind
That's
of
very
why
true.
he
Yeah.
comes on strong. Because, like, for me, it's like, it's really weird that this rando guy is coming in and being all flirty and is like, "Hey, I've got this information on this secret thing that's happening," and she's just like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And like, that's kind of how she feels because someone was like, "Hey, Angel, you vampire with a soul, you should be helping the Slayer." And so he goes to check it out, and that kind of watching her convinces him he should be doing something better with his life rather than just moping around and brooding about his own sins and eating
His
rats.
own existence, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I know we're talking about the wrong episode, but I really appreciated Jenny Calendar turning up because she is fucking wonderful.
I
I
forget how
adore
that ended.
Jenny.
I've been, like I said, I've been like,
Easy, did you?
yeah, I've been binge watching because I know there's
Uh,
some episode later on where someone shows up for a booty call for Giles, and I guess my
hmm
brain just inserted it as, oh, it's,
Someone else.
yeah, and so,
Oh, Joyce does at one point, doesn't she? Yes, she does.
I don't
Because
know, does she?
yeah, the episode with the guy, the trickster, the chocolate, they all turn into children. I
Oh,
think they actually have sex. If I remember correctly, um, because it's revealed he was Ripper,
yeah,
and they Joyce is at Ripper's house, and they're playing like ELO or
I
Led
remember
Zeppelin
this
or
now.
something like
Yes,
that. And they're playing the records and they're smoking. I think they might be smoking weed. And Buffy's like, "What the hell is going on?" And
yeah.
Joyce is all like, oh, we can do that again." And obviously they sort of become a bit sort of shy about it. But that's what I think you might be doing. I think you might be placing Joyce in where Jenny is the what I mean, when we get to that episode, what happens to Jenny Calendar is proper devastating.
Oh
Like
yeah,
some of the most emotional. Like it's insane.
yeah,
Especially how Ripper reacts because it's rough.
yeah.
It's and again it's done really well. But anyways, we're getting well ahead of ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Well ahead of ourselves. The pack.
I'm excited for that one.
I adore this episode. I love it. It's it's silly, but it's the right amount of silly.
Yep.
I still love Xander. He's amongst my favorite characters. So having a really, where Teacher's Pet was, a filler. This is like it might be a 9 for me. Genuinely, it's probably up there.
Oh yeah.
Um, so the episode starts with the whole gang are at a zoo, and they're in the hyena closure when they shouldn't be. There's some tape, and they're not meant to be in there. And a bunch of goons and Xander get whammied with yellow eyes.
Yeah.
And they in essence have like the hyena spirit embedded into them, and they start acting like hyenas, and even like having sort of ticks and the hyena laugh. Some of them
Yeah.
don't pull it off terribly well.
I think some of the sounds they place in for the hyena laugh, I'm like, swear on me, mom, that's a monkey. That's not a fucking
Yes,
hyena.
yes, yeah. Some of them come across really not great, but it's wonderfully done. I so I knew Principal Flutie died early on, so we're going into major spoilers here.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was this episode.
That I think the first time I watched this, it was so shocking to me that I couldn't
Oh yeah.
not forget, because I was like, oh my god, they fucking ate him. Are you fucking kidding? Like, you have to be joking with me. They fucking eat their principal. Oh my
They eat their
god,
principal.
it's fucking
It's
crazy. Especially, he's
it's
not a bad
brilliant.
guy. It's such a rough death for someone who's like, I don't know, I think he's kind of a pushover, as much as he's like, Buffy, your record, blah 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 blah. I'm like,
Yeah,
he's so
Principal
nice though.
Flutie's like a nice guy, whereas Quark, I can't think of his
Snyder.
actual name. Quark.
Oh
Thank you. Schneider turns up. He's a genuine dick, but
yeah.
like not the actor, not he's acted well, but
Oh, yeah.
as a dick,
He's a character
he's a foil.
that's a dick.
Yeah, yeah. So as the episode progresses, sort of they're trying to work out what's going on. Well, I say the Scooby Gang, and
Well, mostly
Xander's
Willow and Buffy. Xander's not really
mostly
into
Willow and
figuring it out.
Xander's acting like a mega creep, trying to put the moves onto Buffy harder than usual,
Oh yeah.
with zero remorse. Well, the saddest part is like Willow's sad face when, Xander, I wouldn't say rejects her, but he's
Tricks her. He tries to trick her into letting him
he
out.
tries. Yes, yeah. He's pretty nasty. He knows that. So at this point in the show, Willow's crushing on Xander. So we all know she ends up with Oz, and then ultimately Tanya. So her romances certainly change. In fact, do they end up together at any point? They do, which is
Yeah,
why
for one second, and it
why
ruins
Cordelia
fucking
ends up with a
everything.
yeah, of course they do. Yeah, Cordelia ends up with a rebar through her tummy.
Yep.
So Buffy and Willow trying to work out what's going on with Xander, and it's kind of worked out between them that there's it's an African tribe, if I remember correctly,
Yep.
where they get possessed by the animals, and there's a whole thing with that and the zookeeper. It's a bit of a Scooby-Doo thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting too, because he's like, these hyenas, no one's allowed to visit with them yet because they've just come in from Africa, and I'm like, is that even allowed? Are you allowed to just bring in hyenas from Africa that were previously in the wild and suddenly put them in a zoo? I feel like that's not allowed anymore, as far as not like today. And I'm like, maybe not even in 1997, but he's like, they just came in from Africa, they're very vicious. And I'm like, that's why that motherfucker didn't want anyone being near them, because he wanted to absorb their full potential, basically.
So that's the only goof of the show. Like if you wouldn't just have a simple bit of tape, on a school event. Surely you'd shut the whole thing down.
Yeah.
And also, I want to say if it's a goof. This is me nitpicking again. Like I'm just trying to find reasons to be, Oh, you couldn't do that. I'm that guy who's watching like the action film and goes, well, he's actually fired 18 bullets when that gun only has 12 rounds, or whatever. Like, oh, shut up, just stop. Like, you don't need to think of it sort of that much. The only other thing is they didn't really explain like what he was going to get out of it. Like,
Well,
what do you get? You're now possessed by a hyena, and you're
Well, Giles
what?
explains like the reason why these people think animals are better than humans is because they're animals. Like he talks
Sure.
about how there's specific tribes and specific peoples over history who have esteemed animals above humans because of humans' humanity. They see it as like a weakness, and so
Right.
that's kind of what he's doing. Is he's trying to stamp out his own humanity. He's trying to esteem himself, make himself stronger and better by absorbing these hyena spirits and becoming one with them. This guy.
Interesting. I missed that, and this is why I enjoy talking about this sort of stuff because I never thought of about the humanity part. I just saw it as like a arguably a silly premise for them to act goofy and to have like the bit where they eat the pig and all that. It's like it's a good setup for these things to happen, but I never considered that sort of humanity side of it.
Yeah, and
And actually, if you look at how Xander acts, he has no he. Do you know what? I think you've really hit the nail on the head because Xander doesn't have any humanity to the two girls that he most cares about. He tricks Willow in a really nasty way because he knows how she feels about him and doesn't care that like he's going to hurt her feelings, and he doesn't care that Buffy has no interest in him. He's just going for that animalistic sex. He's like, if you and I do it, that's great because you and me, baby, are nothing but animals. That's like that's what he's doing. He's going full on bloodhound gang,
yeah.
and he doesn't care.
Yeah, and it's very much like I've seen a lot of people complain about Xander's character later on in the series, and he can be a bit of a self-absorbed. He sees things from his angle, and that's just kind of it. Which there are people who live like that. It's not particularly pleasant, but Xander always comes around. He needs a
Hmm.
good ass kicking every once in a while, but who doesn't? But in this episode, it shows what Xander really could be, as far as like, no, this character could be actually the worst. He's really
He could be.
not. But he definitely could be.
I think it showed off Nicholas Brendan's acting chops. I think I think he's unfairly well. I mean, we've discussed his like clear alcohol and sex addiction and all, whatever he's got going on in his life. He's clearly not as a person a very nice human, but he could clearly act beyond the goofy sidekick.
Yeah.
I think he did quite a good job here as playing as arguably a jock, a
Yeah.
bit of a preppy guy.
Well, and I think
Um,
too, one of the things I love about this episode is how genuinely intimidating the hyena pack is.
they
Like
are.
they are like when they start talking to that kid in the car, I'm like, oh my god, someone stop them,
And I'm
please.
sure all of us knew a group of them like that in school where you were just like, oh, those guys are such dicks, and you just avoided them because you knew you would either end up in like a scuffle or a swearing match or something. There's a few of them from my days of school who, if I saw them, even to this day, I would call them a shit or whatever. Because they were like that. They were just awful people, and they're probably awful people now.
Yeah.
Um, Highlight of the show, obviously, is where they eat the Razorback pig.
Yeah, the cute. He's
Um,
so cute. He's like, he's a vicious razorback, and you're like, yeah, okay.
it's funny. I've managed to capture that scene precisely. I've got Principal Flutie with Buffy holding the pig in the Razorback outfit.
Oh,
Um,
it's so cute.
it
It makes me so sad.
it's set up so brilliantly as well because it's like a normal day at school. All of
Yep.
a sudden, there's a pig running through, and it's oh, this is our mascot. Don't worry, and you sort of I guess as us we see it coming off a mile away.
Oh yeah. Oh for
Um,
sure.
um, and then the ending where they discussing the there you go. There's the scene where they eat the pig, where they're discussing it, and I really appreciated sort of the humor of Giles and him denying. So they know that he knows, but the girls don't. It's wonderfully done. There's a bit of a bro code going on there,
Oh yeah, for
which
sure.
I can
That's
appreciate.
It's so funny because Buffy is just it's one of those she's just a girl kind of moments, you know. You're like, as much as she's the Slayer, like that's gonna break her heart. Maybe don't tell her about the pig, like.
Yeah.
And Principal Flutie
Um.
too. That scene is so
Oh.
wild to me because I'm like, I remember the first time watching it, I'm like, they're not gonna fucking do that. They're not doing that. Are they doing that? And
Well.
then they're like,
What
he was eaten, and I was like, oh my god, they did
what
that.
they did really well though was hiding Xander in the cage.
Yeah.
So he wasn't involved with eating Principal Flutie because fundamentally that would change his character too much.
Oh yeah.
Eating a school mascot's very different from
Yeah.
killing a principal.
Yeah.
Fun fact, for me being more of a music guy than a TV guy, there's the scene where they're all walking down the path, and there's that like strong grunge song. There's a band called Far, um, and it's a fucking brilliant song.
I was gonna say
And
that
again,
song slaps.
it's so good. It's another great use of, specifically in the earlier seasons with the Bronze and that, where um, whoever was involved with the music and that on Buffy knew their shit,
Yeah.
and they knew how to like work the music to the scene. And again, I think this is an art that's kind of lost with newer shows and that.
Yeah. Just the
There's a
lack
lot
of
of
creativity, you know?
Yes, yeah. Well, I think what happens nowadays is, and I'm going to go on a bit of a music rant rather than a TV rant, is that um, they. What I find is a lot of shows they just go to that sort of like generic
Yeah.
hip hoppy sort of thing, and it's just like lazy. Oh, we'll just throw that in. Whereas uh, that has its place. Absolutely, I'm not shitting on hip hop. I am. um, but the right song with the right mood, whether it be classical, whether it be whatever it is, can really set the scene. And because these guys are like badasses, having that slow grunge, like really hard hitting, just makes that scene with them walking so much stronger.
And
Because
it sets such a good
it wouldn't work
tone.
with anything else.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
does.
It fits them perfectly for what they're doing in that moment.
Exactly, and you with so I don't know. I'm just going to play it, but without having a single bit of dialogue for like 10 seconds, you know that these guys are bad.
Yeah. They're not up to
Um,
good things. They're not here to take care of the school mascot and volunteer to pick up trash. Like, no.
and it's even like everyone's looking at them as they're walking down, pushing people around.
Yeah.
Wonderfully done, and not a single bit of dialogue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, that's me. I'm always gonna find the music or whatever in the show. And again, I don't think it's not that it's about that it's my sort of music, because in Angel, Lorne's like a lounge singer. They talk about Burt Bacharach and all goofy stuff, which I don't listen to, but it works beautifully with the scene and with Lorne. You know,
A fun
so
thing that I found the other day, Logic, and this is completely off topic, but there was some magazine that went out and interviewed people who liked Angel and Buffy, and they were like, okay, so at the end of Angel, who do you think he should end up with? And the majority of people who voted on it voted Lorne, which I think is hilarious.
right.
It was like 33% voted for him to end up with Lorne, and I was like, that's fucking hilarious.
How bizarre. Lorne's great. Lorne is he's brilliant. I'm glad he's not there the whole way through, because I think I can understand why people don't like his character, because he do you know what he reminds? Oh God, this is again. I'm going back into music. Like Billy Corgan or Smashing Pumpkins. Like, I understand why people don't like his voice, because it can great, but I think Smashing Pumpkins and Billy Corgan's like genius. It's the same for that. It's like I can understand why someone wouldn't like him, but
Yeah.
I think it's genius.
That's
So it's you understand it, but don't necessarily. I wouldn't hold it over someone's head and say you're wrong. Lorne's brilliant.
yeah.
It's not as simple as that, if that makes sense.
That's like I like the front bottoms, but I like them because his voice is trash and he knows that. And so he caters both the music and the lyrics to his trash voice. So it creates like the most punk rock like set of lyrics like ever. Like there's songs where he's literally like, can you just shut the fuck up to the girl he's supposedly talking to in the song, and you're like, oh my god.
So a great example of that is someone like NoFX. Like Fat Mike cannot sing.
Yeah.
He's not a particularly good bass player. NoFX as a band overall, I'm similar to, I know the Front Bottoms only because of you. It's in that similar vein where like they're not particularly talented, but what they do bloody well.
Yep.
And you could argue that for a lot of punk bands. You could argue that for the likes of Green Day, for Blink-182. A lot of them use 3 or 4 chords, and that's it. But they can still write a really solid pop song.
Yeah. And it's because of, I think too, like just knowing your audience and like knowing your own talents and like where's the sweet spot in this Venn diagram, kind of, where do these two things intersect? That's where we're gonna play.
I would actually liken Buffy to something like Blink-182, where a lot of the shows have the same beats, the same repetition, the same 3 chords.
Yeah.
It's not like a prog band. This is a Dream Theater. We're not going to have these high concept ideas and spanning over multiple episodes. Yes, I mean there are some, but it's much more sort of like that punky ethos where it's like simpler and fun. It's arguably like almost a bubblegum element to it as well. Again with music. I don't listen to pop music in the like the Rihanna pop music sense.
Right.
But I'll listen to like someone like Blur or Oasis or Ash or a lot of that sort of like the Brit pop scene, where a good pop song is a good pop song.
Yep.
Look at my drumming, the Jonas Brothers shit. Like
yeah.
It's a I can't say it's a shit song. I play it basically every week.
Yeah.
So can I say Cake by the Ocean's a shit song? Probably not.
That's that's like Chapel Roan. Her lyrics are so stupid, but the songs themselves, I'm like, they're good. Like, you can't tell me Pink Pony Club's not fun to listen to, and neither is like Phenomenon. Like, they're so much fun to listen to, even though the lyrics make me want to like eat cyanide. Like, I'm like, she knows what she's doing. She does. Like, she understands. Like, if she's the writer, I don't know if she is actually the writer, but if she's the one writing these songs, she fucking understands what a good pop song is, and she's playing that to her advantages. And so, and I think Buffy, like you said, is very similar in that it understands what its advantages are as a show, and I think too, like,
and
season
kind of sticks to it.
It kind
of sticks to it. Maybe a little bit to its detriment later on, but it knows what its core strengths are.
Well, and I think with season 1 too, season 1 you very much stick to Monster of the Week. We get some story. We get Monster of the Week. We get some story, and then maybe next week we get main story. But that like kind of a thing, but. I think even like later on in seasons we get a little bit more away from that. Like in this season I feel like it's not so dark because we're still in season 1. At the end of this season, spoiler alert, Buffy dies and comes back to life, and then at the start of season 2 she's got a chip on her shoulder because of it.
Kendra.
Yeah, and then we have Kendra, and then we have, which I wanted to say with Teacher's Pet, I have no idea what the accent that lady is doing, but I really enjoy it.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. And same with Kendra. I'm like, I don't know what accent Kendra's doing, but it is fun.
I have no clue. She's clearly meant to be like a Jamaican patois or something like that, but it's like it's done so badly. No offense to the actress.
Yeah.
'Cause again, she turned. I can't remember what it was. We were watching something, the wife and I, and I was like, "Holy balls! That is Kendra." Like 20 years later, I'm gonna have to bring up IMDb now, just so I can fulfill my morbid curiosity. So
He's brought it
speaking
up
of the
twice
wife.
already, so you know it's fair.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Speaking of the wife, so when we found out about poor Michelle Trachtenberg, um, she goes, "Oh yeah, yeah, she was in Gossip Girl as well. Oh, she's called Georgina. My wife's called Gina." And she's like, "Oh, she's called Georgina like me." Like I was like, "Yeah, I know." I think every time we bring up Michelle Trachtenberg, I shouldn't call her, sorry, Michelle Trachtenberg, she's like, "Oh yeah, she's called Georgina. She's called Georgina." So she loves that, but for me, it's a bit like, yeah.
Maybe
I
that's why
rather, I
you
rather,
didn't. One of the reasons you don't like her. Like, how dare you steal my wife's name?
yeah.
You keep my wife's
Okay.
name out of your fucking
Out of your
mouth.
mouth. Okay, here's what's my line. So this Kendra, I can see her on the thing. Kendra the Vampire Slayer. Where
That's
is
pretty
where
spot
is
on.
she? I know. I've watched her one too many times. That's why.
Oh, it's so
Kendra
good.
Bianca Lawson. Okay. And again, I'm not. I'm honestly not crapping on her. You know, I would not be surprised if she was told like ham it up, like
Yeah.
just make it as ridiculous as possible. Okay, it could be Pretty Little Liars because I know the wife has watched that, but I wouldn't watch that. She's in an episode of Bones. Interesting.
Really? See, I didn't clock that. And I've seen all of
Yeah,
Bones. So that's crazy to
yeah,
me.
yeah. She's only one episode. Albie, no idea. It means nothing to me. I've never watched it.
Now I gotta look it up.
That's going too far back. Bones. Maybe it was Pretty Little Lies. Maybe it was like maybe the wife dragged me in and was like, "Look who it is." And I probably just yeah, that's the only one I can see is the obvious one. American Horror Story, maybe. I think the wifey's watched that. My guess is Pretty Little Liars because she's in 22 episodes. There you go. So it's probably that.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's quite a bit of episodes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and again, she doesn't have that sort of like silly Jamaican patois thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was like someone on set was like, "Oh yeah, you've got to ham it up, make everyone realize that you're not American."
You're so very Jamaican. Just remember,
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
so very Jamaican, and then she says something, and they're like,
Yes,
"Cut! No, you're
yes,
so
that's the
very
one. That's the one.
Jamaican."
Yeah, but I was hamming it up. I was being silly. No, no, no. That's it. We're gonna stick with it. It's brilliant.
No, you are so
No,
very
no, no.
Jamaican.
Poor Kendra. Like, but there you go. The only other thing to mention about this episode, and again, this is me nitpicking again, was when Willow with the zookeeper chap, he's like, "Oh yeah, stand here. We need to have the knife." And Willow sort of like basically like straight up walks into the trap. Now I know Willow's character is very meek at this point, specifically very meek,
Right.
very sort of timid and so forth. And she basically just lets him put a knife up to her throat. The whole time I'm sort of going, "Wait, what?" Like, surely you'd be like, "Bro, why have you got this great big fucking Rambo knife? Can you calm down?" Like, it's just a bit. Again, it's me being a bit nitpicky. Like I said, you've got to suspend disbelief a little bit.
Well, and I think too, like, Willow's a very different person from me. So me personally, I'd be like, "Motherfucker, I'm not coming near you. This knife was not part of the
Yeah.
plan." Whereas Willow is like, she's Miss Studious, she's Miss Listen to your
Yes.
teachers, she's Miss Meek and humble and avoid confrontation. You know, so I think
Maybe it
for
works with the character
specifically
as she is
Willow
now.
as she is, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas Willow in season 4 or 5, she's like, "Fuck you, I'm putting a
Yeah,
spell on
when
you."
she's Mega Witch powers,
Yeah,
yeah,
she's
yeah,
like, "We
it
don't even
doesn't
need
work.
this guy. I'll do it myself." You know, season 6, Willow is like, "Fuck
I
that
mean,
guy."
if you walked into a cave with fires on and a fucking painting of a hyena on the floor and a dude in some goofy ass like paint and a robe and a great big Rambo knife, that's not a knife. You'd be like, "Ah, peace, motherfucker. I am out. I ain't walking
Yeah,
into here. This is a trap." This has trap written all over the front of it.
Well, and you think too about Willow, like she's coming from they're coming, and so she's like operating under the assumption this guy's doing whatever he's doing to help them. So she's kind of like still a little naive, I think, at this point in the series. You know, you get further on and it's like you get Angelus and, you know, Spike and shit like that, where they're constantly coming up with sneaky shit to do. So they get a little bit more suspicious of others, and they're a little bit more like, you could be the monster of the week, I don't even fucking know. You know, I think there's a little bit of that later on, versus like here they're still pretty new to everything, so it doesn't really occur to her.
And one thing, you know, I need to emphasize, because it sounds like I'm sort of dumping on the show a little bit, and that's not the case at all. You know, if you consider season 1, it smashes it out the gates, really, because at this point there's like 4 really like blinding episodes. Yeah, there's a couple fillers, but it's a strong start, and you've really started to develop the characters and the world as well.
Yeah, and it's hard to do all of that right away, but with Buffy, it starts so strong that you really do understand, okay, this is the generalization of this world. And then especially with season 1, like, you get, okay, this is the Hellmouth, so literally kind of anything can happen. If you're someone who has a little bit of extra something, you could be doing all kinds of shit in the Hellmouth. Not necessarily in LA, but like here on the Hellmouth, you could be doing some shit.
Well, in fact, I can't remember which episode, but Giles even says that. It's like, oh, isn't it exciting? We live on the very precipice of the Hellmouth, and, you know, anything's possible. And again, in a way, that sort of sets the show up as like, you know, when later on, when you get zombies, later on when you get werewolves, and you get flipping the mayor turning into a great big snake monster. All of it is sort of explained relatively well. So yes,
and even the stuff that you can't really explain too well, it just kind of makes sense. Like the nightmare episode, they're like, well, this kid's psychological trauma, because he's still in a coma, is permeating throughout the whole town, because the Hellmouth is just latching onto that negative energy. And so you're like, it's not an exact science to be living on the Hellmouth.
Supernatural ooze is emanating in the skies. Deal with it.
Yeah. Today's Tuesday, so obviously the Hellmouth is gonna...
Should we carry on with Angel and iRobot and carry on a little bit, or did you want to? Was there anything you wanted to add to the pack? I mean, for me, it's a fun episode. Xander strong. Most of it's the setup for the Prince of Flutie dying and the pig getting nommed on.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Like it's not the most dense of episodes.
Yeah.
But what it does bloody brilliantly. You know, again, it's a bit like your favorite punk song. You know, yes, it's 3 chords, but you know, it's 3 amazing chords. It's really good.
I got you, crew.
You know?
Yeah. I love the pack. I think, like you said, it's just well done. It's so well done, and it's so like previously we haven't had anything truly sinister, but this episode does give off a sinister vibe. Like, these hyena kids, if they're allowed to keep being hyena kids, they're gonna be fucking ravenous beasts eating people. Yeah. And I think you even get to see that a little bit when they start to, like, talk to the kid in the car, and you're like, oh my god, stop.
when I can't remember who it is, I can't even remember if it's Buffy or Angel, but there's a moment later on where, like, the big bad's actually just a human.
Yeah.
And for me, that kind of applies to this to a degree, where you when you have something that's possessed by a demon, or is a demon, or is a werewolf, or whatever it might be, you know, that supernatural thing is explained like, look, they have bloodlust, there's sort of no control in it. When it's a human, I think that becomes a lot more sinister.
Yep.
And I think that's partially why it works so well, is because, again, we know Xander, we're sort of connected to him, being, you know, part of the Scooby Gang and so forth, and that makes it that much more difficult. because of our ties to him, and because he is the everyman,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and I think that's kind of why faith turning is such a gut
Oh, it's so
punch.
powerful. It's so
Because
powerful.
you're
Yeah.
like you're the Slayer, you're supposed to be on our side, you're supposed to be good, and she's just like another person who's
I
just I'm gonna
just
be
don't
evil.
care.
Yep.
She says, I just don't care.
She's just trying to
Sorry,
find
V.
the
I
easy
just don't
way.
care.
Yeah. She's all about, the easy way out versus doing the right thing. Whereas Buffy is, no, we're doing the right thing even if it's fucking hard. Like, I literally stabbed my boyfriend into a hell dimension. Don't fucking tell me that you can't just stand up for the right thing.
That episode is just wonderful. I can't wait for us to get there.
Yeah, same.
And it's
I'm
and
also excited for the Angel episode because it highlights one of my favorite things, which is there's all this supernatural shit going on, and someone just pulls out a gun. And you're like, well,
should we just let's just get onto Angel, I think. Let's just do it. Why not? We've got the time.
Hell yeah.
We can do it, right?
Yeah.
So, this is an easy 9 for me.
Oh.
I absolutely loved it.
I think because of Darla pulling out a gun, for me it hits that 10 because it's such a like, yeah, you've got all these
10?
Vampires and stuff, but this is still the modern
Yeah.
age. Like Buffy pulls out a crossbow and she just whips out 2
Misses.
pistols.
She misses.
Oh, it's so
Sorry,
good.
love, that's not my heart.
It's incredible.
Well, okay. I mean, the reason is it's so for me, for a Buffy or an Angel episode to be like top tier, S tier. I mean, this is pretty much S tier. It needs to have Darla, Angel. Buffy's kind of optional. Sorry, all Buffy fans. And if it has the lore, so I specifically love the episodes where they go back in time with like where we had like Spike and Drusilla, and you see like them creating chaos in like England or Ireland or wherever it is they're going and creating chaos. I love those, and there's an element. It's starting to really build that world, because this is where you go, oh, okay, they do know each other, even though we know this already,
right?
And this is one of the problems with rewatching the show. Maybe I'm like watching it. I don't know how I can do it. I almost need to like wash my brain so I can watch it with fresh eyes. But the problem is, I'm like, oh yeah, I know who this is. I know what's going to happen. It's a little bit frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, with we find out what the Darla side Angel. We find out that the Master side Darla. And there's a great episode, I'm pretty sure it's in Angel later on, where we actually see the Master coming back, which, again, I loved. Again, see, that's another hallmark. It's like when they bring these great characters back, and it's top tier. And I'm a big Buffy Angel guy. I'm Buffy Angel over Buffy Spike, so maybe there's like that like romantic in me still, that
That's like. It's so funny because I talked about the first time I talked about, I remember being really, really young, and some episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer is playing where Angel is shirtless, and my little, like, 4 to 5-year-old mind is like, huh, men! And my mom was like, you're not watching that, and shut it off real fast, and I was like, damn it! Kind of, like, even as, like, a 4 or 5-year-old, and it was because this specific episode is this fucking episode. And it was so funny because the first time I watched it, it was, like, being time warped back to when I was a kid, because I was like, I fucking remember seeing this for like 2 seconds, and Mom was furious that I had it on television. Like,
yeah,
get that shit off your screen, child.
I hadn't, again, like I said earlier, I hadn't realized at this point that Buffy did not know that Angel was a vampire. I don't know why. I guess it's just like I know, therefore she knows.
Yeah.
Like some dumb logic like that, I guess. So when they finally do get to have a little smoochy, and it all goes a little bit wrong, it really sets off a fantastic chain of events.
Yeah.
If I was to complain about anything again, it's this thing I keep going on about, where Angel and her basically get their butts slightly kicked. and
Yeah.
they're running, and you're like, well, hold on, you're talking about a 300-year-old vampire who in Angel is like fighting hordes of demons and dragons and whatever, and Buffy who again much the same, and you're double strength. So what's anything versus the two of you? It just doesn't make. It's a little bit like the Marvel syndrome, isn't it? To like, if there's a big bad that's bad enough, well, why don't you just get every single superhero into just smash it?
Yeah.
Like, and they have to sometimes just explain it. Oh yeah, like with Miss Marvel, they're like, oh yeah, she's away in another planet doing whatever she's doing. You're like, well, hold on, if she's that strong and that powerful, just fucking send her an SMS. Yo, bitch, shit's getting real. Come over and help me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like, it just doesn't make sense.
Pull up,
Like,
pull up.
yeah, yeah, that people need to sort out like, and it's always bothered me that they're like the power levels, and it changes. I know it's me. I know it's me. I know I have to suspend disbelief, but it does bother me. Like one episode, they like doing backflips and throwing like, people through windows, and the next they get their butt kicked by someone that looks like me. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, then it also makes me wonder because like they're getting their asses handed to them by the three, and so they're pretty powerful. These three vampires. You would have to assume if Buffy and Angel are getting their asses kicked by these three vampires, and then they go back to the Master, and the Master lets Darla kill them, and you're like, motherfucker, they
Which
almost
is
had
wonderful.
it. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why would you kill them? They almost had it. Let them go again. Like. I don't know, just
But
crazy
I mean,
to me.
again, that I will say that was sort of explained because they sort of like of an old knight tradition, and like they almost that sort of samurai thing need to fall upon the sword because they screwed up. That sort of very stoic. I did not complete my mission, therefore my penance is my life. And it's wonderful because you get to see Darla. Gleefully stabbing them up. It's wonderful to see that because
Yeah.
Julie Benz. I adore her as an actress. Whenever she appears in anything, I'm like, oh my god, it's Julie. I love her. And she plays Darla. Just it's for me, it's easily her most iconic role.
Oh yeah.
Because she just is so gleeful, and again, it's a bit like you said with the guns. She just gleefully pulls out these guns. She's sadistic, she's psychotic, she's morbid, she is evil, and it's a shame, spoiler alert, that she dies at the hands of Angel,
Yeah.
which I didn't realize. I don't know why I didn't realize.
Well, and I think too, like, it's so important, like, because at this point, like, Buffy, she's like, is everything been a lie? Is he just trying to trap me? Is this a trick? Is he really a good vampire? What the fuck is happening? And so when he kills Darla, that kind of cements in her
He's
mind.
proven himself.
Yeah, and so it's so important. I also, like you said,
it is, yeah.
when they're smooching and her little cross necklace hits him and he goes full vampire for a second. I love that because it's so like Angel. Yes, he's very powerful and he's a vampire and everything, but he could also accidentally die in so many ways just being around Buffy. Like he could accidentally get hurt in so many different ways just hanging around the Scooby Gang.
Rolls out of bed, falls on some steak, and that's it.
Yeah. Or like he's like, oh, I stayed up too late with you guys, and now the sun's out. Guess I'm gonna crisp. Like,
whoops. No, it's actually that's a really good point because it's revealed that to Buffy that him and Darla had a history, so Buffy starts to question everything, especially because Darla is psychotic and has sort of been a bit of a thorn in her side, and to then very very simply pick Buffy over Darla and the Master fundamentally, is like I said, very symbolic.
well, and I think too, like, it's so funny to me that Darla thinks like, I'm gonna convince Angel to come back to our side, and it's like, motherfucker,
Yeah.
he has a soul
Why?
now. Why do you think he would do that? But
That whole thing doesn't make sense. I mean, like,
But I think it shows that these vampires do have some sort of humanity to them. Like when you get the judge later, he sniffs Spike and he says, "You stink of humanity because of your affection for one another." And so even though there's this quote unquote demon living inside your body, they still have the capacity to have affection for others. And so that's very interesting to me. And this is kind of the first we get to really see that.
They do. I mean, if you think about it, throughout all of Angel and Buffy, they do, because obviously when Spike shows up, him and Drusilla are very, very much him and Drew. Like, he saves her, she saves him. Then obviously Buffy and Angel, obviously Buffy and Spike, Angel and Cordelia, Angel and Darla when she gets brought back. And she gets, spoiler alert, she gets brought back as human, which is why is it Lindsay gets someone to change her. I can't remember. We're gonna have to we'll work that out when we get there, but I'm pretty sure she gets someone from Wolfram and Hart, either Lindsay or the blonde girl, to get a vampire to change her back. And she tries to get Angel to do it because, again, this is sort of showing that her pleading. She's dying of, I want to say something like chlamydia. It's not that. It's not that. She has the clap, and she's dying. And I mean, okay, it's not that.
The clap is killing her.
She's got the super AIDS, and she wants Angel to save her life, and she's pleading with him, saying, "Look, if you don't turn me to a vampire again, I'm doomed to die, and you're the hero. The only way you can save my life is by turning me." So you're right. You know, they do have some humanity.
I want to say too, like, saying she dies from AIDS, that's probably, like, if this show came out in the 80s, that's exactly what she would be dying of. For an AIDS awareness episode.
It's better not be going on YouTube, because I'll get banned from everything.
Yeah, it's such a, like, it's so interesting to me. And then again, like, this sets the precedence for later on when the judge appears. You know, it's, the modern age, you know, no weapon forged can destroy him. Well, that was 1,000 years ago. Yeah, and so, it's just so good. If I remember,
is it Xander? Because there's the episode where he becomes a soldier.
Yep.
And then he takes him to. Doesn't he get the bazooka because of his, like, army memory or something like that?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Is it Oz, I guess.
No,
something
Oz
like
takes the van so they can load up the bazooka. So it's kind of like a group effort. Because he brings Cordy with him because he needs someone to help him carry, and also she's his excuse. Like, he's like, you know, I'm off duty today. Just let me go in and show the girl the guns, because it gets him all hot and bothered.
Give her a quick show.
Yeah,
that's right.
And he's like, you have 20 minutes, and he's like, I just need 5, and then he's like, pretend you didn't hear that. Which I think is there's, like, so many lines that you're like, oh, that's fucking hilarious. Like, I love, she pulls out the bazooka, and the judge, like, you see Angel and Drew immediately start booking, and the judge just goes, what's that?
Careful, and jealous.
Oh, true, and jealous at the time. But I just love his reaction is, what's that? Like, because he wouldn't fucking know. Like, it's so good. There's so much, like,
it's wonderfully done. I mean, season two is fantastic.
Oh yeah,
it's so stinking good.
It's so good. And then also we have Spike showing up with Drew, and that's also a highlight. It's my favorite thing about it.
That's quite early, isn't it?
Yeah. They show up, I think it's episode 3 of season 2, which, thank God, because I'm like, there's such a highlight.
Any moment now.
Yeah.
The only other thing sort of worth mentioning for the episode of Angel is Joyce again. I think she's often overlooked just because she's the mother character. But it's really good to see those characters that are, like, completely grounded in reality.
Yep.
Where she's oblivious to the things that are going on, and again, that sort of helps us as a viewer to feel like we're part of something, because not even Buffy's mom knows what's going on. Well, we know we're in the secrets, we're in the GAN.
Yeah.
But Joyce doesn't know, and she's, again, like, I can't think of the actress's name, but she's really good. She just
Christine Sutherland.
Christine Style, thank you. She's almost like the mother you look. No, I'm obviously not knocking my mother. She's wonderful, but you know what I mean. She's like that
Yeah,
sort of TV like
everyone's
the
mom
mom.
kind
Yeah,
of a
exactly
person.
right. Yeah, yeah.
And she,
If that was like,
I love her concerns for Buffy are so grounded in it. Like, honey, he's older than you, and you're like,
yeah, yeah,
buddy, she just
chasing
went out and
the dog.
almost died. Like, that's the least of your concerns right now. But she doesn't know that. She's just trying to be a good mom. And the other thing is, I was
Yeah.
watching. So someone reminded me on Twitter, because I follow a lot of different Buffy fan accounts, and someone put together a clip of Buffy saying that she was institutionalized back in LA for a little bit because she told her mom about the first time she ever saw a vampire, and her parents freaked out and thought she was going insane, and so they put her in an insane asylum until she stopped talking about it. And so
Right. So I've
I
never noticed that.
and then you look at the episode, which I think comes next season because it's during when Angelus is Angelus, and Spike is like sitting there trying to like kind of one up Angelus with Buffy's help. And so Joyce finds out she's a vampire slayer. Like she says that, she tells her mom, and her mom freaks out and is like, "Don't be the vampire slayer." And she's like, "I literally can't not be the vampire slayer." And so just looking at her mom's reaction and thinking about that initial reaction, then this reaction in Sunnydale, and Buffy should have so much more bitterness and resentment toward her parents than she does. And
Yeah.
I like that Buffy is a character that can forgive and forget. Like she can get over those things. Because I
I
think
mean,
that would detract so much from Joyce's worries and Joyce's mom-isms.
I think with handled by a worse writer and director, specifically I'm talking about Whedon here, I think that's what they would probably do because it's quite common in shows now to have mommy and daddy issues. Now,
Yeah.
yes, there are episodes where like Buffy's dad doesn't show up or is he's an absentee father. Sure, it's kind of a typical Disney trope as it were,
Yeah.
the single parent thing.
Or the no parent
But it,
thing. You're an orphan.
or the no parent thing, yeah, yeah. But in worse hands, it could be like you said. It could be, I hate my mom, I hate my dad, and she could be resentful and bitter. But instead, Joyce is actually a great source of strength for her.
And I think too, Buffy
And
is such a reasonable human being. I like that's what it really like shows to me is yeah, she's a teenager, she wants to be, but because she's had to grow up so fast in this Slayer role, she's such a reasonable human being. Like instead of being like my mom didn't believe me and fuck her for that, she's like my mom lives in a normal world. She has no idea any of this stuff exists. I didn't have any idea that this stuff exists until it was, I was thrown in the middle of it. So, like, why am I going to hold that against her? And so, I think that just makes
and you
Buffy
can't,
very much more mature than we realize.
yeah, it is because you can't hold someone accountable for something they're not aware of.
Yeah, you don't know what
And
you
this
don't
actually
know.
Yeah, and this actually ugly speaks to like a much bigger political sort of thing. Maybe that's why we're on Rumble and things like that because we're sort of more attuned to this sort of thing. The world nowadays expects everyone to be held accountable for things that they're completely blissfully unaware of.
Yeah.
Oh, you're racist because you're white. Well, hold on. I don't have a racist bone in me. It doesn't make sense when people are calling you out for these sort of things. And that would be the same for Joyce. It'd be like you can't be held accountable for something you don't know, and that's why it's nice to have these like characters that are played straight, shall we say. And I think Joyce is probably the strongest of them.
Yeah. Especially she's so like she really does like when Buffy's like, "Mom, I need you to blah 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 blah, please." Joyce is like, okay," even if she doesn't really understand it. Like when Angel turns bad, she's like, "Don't talk to him, don't let him in the house, he's freaking me out. Like he's been stalking me," and she makes up some excuses and Joyce is like, "Okay." Even though you're like, Joyce cannot possibly hold off this vampire.
Yeah, the whole setup there is really clever, where Darla tricks um, Joyce and Buffy to in making Angel the fall guy.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is this. It's convenient timing that Angel happens to run in and catch Joyce as Buffy walks in. But
Well,
it is very well done.
and I wonder if Darla didn't set something up too, like, to drag Angel there at some point.
Yeah,
And it just happens to be, she's like, okay, Angel should be clocking in any second. Time to throw Joyce right at him, like, this is perfect timing, even better than I planned, kind of a thing. You have to wonder, because she really is, I mean, she's like that. Darla's like that. She's very clever.
Darla's one of the more intelligent of the should we call them the core vampires? So your Angeluses, your Spikes, and so forth. Darla's, I'd say, probably the most manipulative and cunning of them all.
Oh yeah,
because
I think Drew is up there too, but Drew is also like.
The problem with Drew is she's fucking psychotic.
Yeah.
But in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
She's like this beautiful insanity. So like the way I'd look at it is like Darla's almost like the one holding the strings, like the kind of like the puppet master, really sort of intelligent. Yeah. Angel's kind of like a bit of an agent of chaos, because obviously as Liam, he was a drunk, he was a loser, and he sort of a debaucherous man. Spike is, I mean, as Spike says, I think it's even in season 2 when Angelus is back. He doesn't like Angelus because Angelus wants to destroy the world.
Yeah.
And Spike doesn't because of the walk-in Happy Meals. So they really are kind of opposite of that sort of. Yes, they're both evil, but they kind of see life in a totally different way.
Yeah. Even when they were like, you even look at them as humans and then them as vampires and their actions, they have completely different MOs. Like the things they care about are inherently different. And I think that's why Drew has some really good ideas, like bringing the judge about. She just literally orders the judge's parts from all different parts of the world and is like, we're going to put together this mass murderer. And you're like, holy shit, Drew. But because she doesn't care about the same things Darla does, like, Drew doesn't have any ties to the master. She's like, fuck that guy.
No.
And I don't think Drew ever would have any ties to someone who's like, I'm going to tell you what to do. Drew would be like, fuck that. I'm doing what I want. And so because what they care about is inherently different, I don't think Drew gets to shine so much in that area because Darla has purpose. Whereas Drew's like, we're just going to cause as much chaos as possible.
And because she's a chaotic character, it might be harder to see the genius behind it, if that makes sense. I mean, she's what's her name now? Is it Lando or something like that? Anyways, the actress, she does maybe the best acting through the show.
Oh yeah, she's so good as Drew.
Drusilla may be the best acted out of everyone.
She's incredible.
She's next level, I'd say.
Yeah, I think Spike too does a really good job. James Marsters, I think he does a great job as Spike. Those two are like two of the most interesting and well-balanced characters as far as their acting and their character goes, because you play that just a little too hard or a little too heavy in one area and it completely falls apart, like
especially Drew and Spike, because like I'm just imagining scenes with Drew where she's she's kind of like airy and floating, she's like waving her arms in the air and she's sort of speaking to spirits that aren't there or people that aren't there. In anyone else's, it could go really campy and ridiculous. Especially, like someone like me who's not an actor, I would look like a fucking lunatic if I was walking around,
with your hands up by your head.
Yeah. Oh, speak to me, angels. Like it's like in the wrong hands, it would be disastrous. And she just does it. You truly believe that she's a psychotic vampire through and through, and the same for James Marsters. I'm not trying to take anything away from him,
Yeah, they're like, it's so funny because they pop on the scene and you're like, they're the perfect evil power couple, and then Angelus comes back and it kind of fucks up the balance, and
fucks it up,
and that's really like why they fall apart in the end, is because of Angelus, like, and it's because of his psychotic tendencies, Angelus's, and he's the one who made Drusilla go insane, and so she has this weird fixation with him, a little bit of Stockholm syndrome probably, and so it's this whole new dynamic, and it's really well written and it's really well acted, and it's just the bomb. It's amazing.
And again, it's not to take anything away from David Boreanaz, because
Yeah.
when he switches between Angel and Angelus, it's super believable. I actually started watching SEAL Team Six with him in, and it took me a couple of episodes because the natural inclination when you have a star that you adore from another show and you go, oh, Sarah Michelle Gellar, she's Buffy, she can't be Daphne and Scooby Doo. That does make sense. Like, you have it takes a minute to do that.
Yeah.
And actually, like, I'm sure this applies for you for watching Bones or whatever, but you know, whatever his character is in SEAL Team Six, I now believe him to be that, and it just shows that you can. He is a really good actor. He is not just one note. He's not just Angel. He's not just Angelus. He's also Seely, whatever his name is,
Yeah, yeah.
and so on. So I don't mean to take anything away from him.
Yeah, no.
I just think Drew is just like every second she's on the screen, it's just a joy to watch for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I think her and Spike come on, and both of them really just chew scenery. Like they're just
100%, 100%.
they're the focal point. Like it doesn't fucking matter what else is going on in the back. You could be parading elephants in the background. It doesn't fucking matter if Drew or Spike is on the screen. You're focused on them.
And even how they arrive in the car
Yes.
with like the music and everything, it's just like everything changes so much when those two just burst in on the scene, and that's what they do. They just burst in. It's fucking wonderful.
Oh yeah, and as much as they're well written, they're also they survive as long as they do because they're so well acted as well. Like Spike was originally supposed to die at the end of season 2, but because
Right.
fans loved Spike so much, Joss Whedon felt he had to keep him, or else he'd have like a mutiny on his hands, and that's probably true. Just looking at the fandom of Spike now, it's fucking huge.
From what I understand, and this is me sort of digging into the recesses of my mind, but from what I understand was when Buffy finished and Spike went to Angel with the amulet and all that nonsense, um, there was originally meant to be a Spike spin-off, is what I understood,
Oh,
and it didn't happen for whatever reason, and that's why he ended up on Angel via the amulet.
that's some bullshit. We got fucking ripped. I want to go to the fucking timeline where
Yeah.
that show
Now,
exists.
now this is me like digging into my like old man brain. Spike. Let me look.
And
Spike
Coffee,
spin-off.
I'm not ignoring your comment. Yeah, she died. She's 39 years old. We talked about it a little bit more at the beginning of the episode of Michelle Trachtenberg passing away. Logic, from what Logic was reading, he said supposedly from a transplant malfunction, essentially.
Yeah, so from what I literally read it just before coming on. Actually, I'll repeat what I said at the beginning. I I messaged Hannah about 15, 20 minutes before we were meant to go live, and I said, "Are we going to go ahead?" And the reason, specifically from my point of view, is because I've said a few times that I'm not a big fan of Dawn. I'm not a big fan of um, I gave her a horrible nickname, and I actually felt really bad about it. And I was like, "Oh, do we do the show?" Because I feel like it's a bit uncouth. There's a posh word. I felt a bit uncouth about it all, and maybe there's like a bit of I feel bad about giving her a mean nickname. But Hannah said we should go on, and actually we're it was the right thing to do. But anyways, from what I read was that yeah, she had I think it was a liver transplant, and this is probably like a year ago, but it sounds like there's complications from that, from the little bit that we could read. The wife, I'll repeat it again. The wife keeps every time Michelle Trachtenberg comes up, she's like, "Oh, she was in Gossip Girl. Her name was Georgina in Gossip Girl, and that's my wife's name." So she tells me this fact every time. Yes, yes, I do know what your name is, and I do know what her name is from the show. Don't worry.
Your wife's
I just know,
favorite Michelle
I just
Trachtenberg
know,
fact.
I just know her as Dawn. That's all I know her as. And bless her. Like, I mean, we were saying earlier, maybe I'm a bit harsh on Dawn as a character. I think that maybe it's me because I
I don't
really
think
struggle to
so.
get. I struggled to get past season. No, because I was going to say I struggled to get past season 3 and Buffy. I truly do. Like when Riley and Adam and Gloria and it just for me it gets really goofy. I find a lot of those things just a bit daft. And maybe I'm just sort of stuck in the past, which is why think about Angel. You got Angel, you got Cordelia, you got Wesley. It's all the original lot from season 2.
Well, and I think season 2 and season 3 is so strong that when season 4 comes, especially like, I think it's so funny because at the time you're pissed, you're like, who the fuck is this? But like
Yeah.
later on, it's kind of funny to me, and I think it's a great way to introduce Dawn as a character.
It's-
They're like, yeah, Buffy's little sister. You know Buffy's little sister. Buffy's little sister, and you're like, who the fuck? She doesn't have any family aside from her mom. What do you mean?
We were saying this earlier that in hindsight, it was really well done because I remember watching it in 2001 or whatever it was, 2000, and just being like, "What the hell? Have I missed an entire season?"
That's literally. I was like,
And
I feel like
then-
I'm taking crazy pills. I had to I had to stop and Google it because I was like, this is too much for me. Like, am I really on drugs or something? What are they feeding me in the cafeteria? Because I was in college watching it at the time. So I was like, what are they sneaking into our food, man?
And you've got to remember, this is the era long before Google was around. Don't get me wrong, but probably Yahoo was probably the main one, or Ask Jeeves or something like that was probably the main search engines back then. And it wasn't common. Like I knew plenty of people who didn't have internet at home in the 2000s. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm just going to pop into IMDb and find out what the hell's going on. And of course, each episode was once a week. For us, it was on Channel 4 in the UK. You had to, or was it BBC Two? Whatever, Channel 4, I'm pretty sure. But you had to tune in on like a Tuesday at 8 o'clock to watch the next episode. You didn't go onto fucking Netflix. What was Netflix? No one's ever heard of that shit in 2001.
Yeah.
Like DVD player. Oh yeah, you want to buy a DVD player? 2001, it cost you like $2,000.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing. It's like it just didn't exist. And DVRs, you can record from the TV.
Ask Jeeves, yeah.
Okay. You mean a VHS, right?
Yeah.
Like in those days, you watched the episode and you went, "What the fuck just happened there?"
And
you wouldn't know for another week.
Yeah.
You genuinely wouldn't.
It occurred to me at the time too how lucky I was that I was able to just binge watch. Because I think I watched like 2 or 3 episodes, and when it wasn't addressed, that's when I went and Googled it. Because I was like, okay, I can't just go like 3 full episodes without having any answers about who the fuck this girl is and why they just plopped her into the show. It's damaging my brain. So I was like, thank God, like it's completed, and I have Google, because if not, I'd be so confused.
But here's Reddit to the rescue. Buffy aired on BBC Two back in the day, so I was wrong. It wasn't Channel 4, it was BBC Two. It wasn't. It looks okay. So I'm just reading what people are saying here. It looks like it was actually meant to be a Giles spin-off via the BBC.
Oh.
So as of 2001, Joss was trying to get the Giles spin-off through the BBC, but it fell through. UPN wanted a Faith spin-off, but Eliza wasn't interested. Now, I mean, this is like the problem with nowadays, where like Disney owns Star Wars and even Star Trek with Paramount, and that there's now like there's a drought of Star Trek and Star Wars in the 2000s, and now we're awash of shit Star Trek, of shit Star Wars. I think if you'd had, don't get me wrong, Eliza Dushku, probably my S number one babe of all time, having her own show would have been not great. I mean, have you ever tried to watch Dollhouse?
No.
Yeah, it's not particularly great. I can't see a Giles spin-off or a Eliza a Faith spin-off working. So maybe I was wrong about the Spike thing. The way I always understood it was that when Buffy, maybe it's just died on me. When Buffy finished, Spike wanted to carry on, and that's why he went to Angel.
Yeah. Well, and I think a Spike spinoff would have worked perfectly well because he's got such a following then and even now. And then also he's just such an interesting, like, he just kind of rolls with the punches and just kind of like la-ti-das through life that he accidentally stumbles into so many things, and it's so believable that he's just stumbling into these things. It would have been amazing, but I have to get going here in maybe 2 minutes.
Right, yeah, let's wrap this up. One thing that's interesting actually is, because this is a good point, Faith shows up in Angel, for quite a few episodes. So does Spike. So maybe when they were talking about doing these spin-offs, maybe that's why Faith ended up in Angel for a bit, and why Spike. Maybe there is sort of credence to that, where these spin-offs that don't ever take off end up being turfed off into Angel.
Well, and I would definitely think that's a good way to test the water, because these characters originated on Buffy, so do they stand even without Buffy and the crew around? And so a good way for them to have tested that was to throw them over on Angel. Which was darker and more mature, so they could have had, which they do. I mean, the storyline with Wesley and Faith in Angel is devastating, so, you know. Yeah.
Right, well, let's wrap up then. We're gonna try and do this again next week. We're gonna try and keep it to a Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that'll work for me. A-okay. And then next week we'll have, let's see, I have to back up again. We've got iRobot, Eugene, Puppet Show, and Nightmares. Do we want to?
My suggestion is we get to the end of season 1, because. Realistically, Puppet Show it's a 5-minute chat.
Yep.
Similar for Nightmares, and then we're probably going to be focusing on the last 2 episodes, specifically Prophecy Girl, which is a fucking banner.
Oh yeah.
That's probably.
I'll probably talk a lot about Nightmares, because that is a favorite of mine. Puppet Show is so meh.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's such
I enjoy Nightmares.
Yeah, it's a good view of where Buffy is at emotionally. Although I do really like Out of Mind, Out of Sight too. That one is so good, and the ending of it just cracks me up.
If I'm not mistaken, the end of Nightmares is where the clown is there and doing the chocolates for Xander.
Yeah. That's part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's not quite the end, but
that's my favorite bit. That's my favorite bit. And Out of Mind, Out of Sight's the invisible girl above the ceiling. Yes. Okay. I remember.
Yeah.
Logic remembers.
Yeah, he's done it, lads. He's remembered.
His 47. No, I'm 42. 42-year-old brain isn't totally fried. Not just yet.
Not yet, lads. He's still got a ways to go.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you,
Logic.
As always.
Yes.
I'm going to blast through these next ones, and I'm going to jump into season 2 because I fucking adore season 2.
Season 2 is when Spike shows up. It's when Oz shows up. Like rewatching Teacher's Pet last night, I was like, I miss Oz.
My son is named after Oz because I am that much of a fan. I fucking adore Oz.
Oz is such a good part of this show.
He's quirky, he's named
but
after
smooth.
Both Oz and Xander. It's because he's got more names. He's got more than one name.
He's got to have more than one name, you know? He is the child.
That's 100% true.
He's the Anointed. He's got to have multiple names.
He's the Anointed one. Yeah, I know, right? Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too.
And we'll catch up in a week.
Hell yeah, I'm excited. And thank you guys for being here. Appreciate y'all.
Yes, thank you everyone. And if there's feedback or anything, it would be nice if we. I was thinking before jumping in, if like Raken or someone was into it as well, it'd be nice to get a third Rumble streamer that we know that put input into it. It'd be nice to have that. Or even what would be even better is someone who's never seen the show before, who wants to try and catch up and watch some shows and then have that fresh eyes. Because I'd love to hear someone's fresh eyes.
That would be especially not. We would have to be really good about spoilers. That would be so fucking tough though.
We would,
because it would be like your fresh eyes. What do you think right here, right now? So
yeah, whereas we're going, I know what happened with Darla.
Yeah. Well, and maybe
Mention Darla.
I'll talk to Riken, and then I'll talk to Charles too, and see if he wouldn't be interested, because I think Charles would really enjoy Buffy.
Charles would be great. Yeah.
And my older brother, he loves Buffy, but he's a bit of a he's old hat. Plus he's a school teacher, so he's kind of like.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. He's an English teacher, so he would be really good on this just because of themes and things like that. He's really good at that stuff, but yeah.
Wicked. Well,
I'll talk to Riken and then Charles.
Maybe we can try and do that for Wednesday. I think that'd be awesome if we can get a fresh eyes view on Buffy with us, because then it just makes it a bit more dynamic.
Yes, I agree.
And reins us in from going on about fucking episode 23, season 3 of Angel. It was like, are you jumping that far ahead? It's just because, searching from my point of view, I'm just fucking excited. I love it.
Yeah, same. All right.
Take care, man. Have a lovely one.
You too.
Take care. Cheers. Bye.